Hello and welcome back. Another episode of the Dynasty After Party. Butchering the intro already. How is everyone doing today? My name is Michael Sicoli. I'm your host as always. But you're noticing next to me, it's not the smiling face of Joel Worth. It's actually the smiling face of Austin Amandolia with Club Fantasy. How are you today, Austin?
Doing great. Glad to be joining the after party. It feels very much like an after party vibe after staying up late with the Scott Fish potathon last night. So, just ready to keep the party going.
And I'm glad you're bringing it up because Scott Fish Bowl drafts are going on all over the place, except for my league, Austin. We don't start till tomorrow. I'm
Same.
getting texts all through the 109 chat going, oh man, I'm ready to do this. How do you think of this? I'm through 5 rounds. And I'm like, man, just can DeAndre Hopkins sign so I get like an advantage maybe for waiting this long? Like give me something if I'm gonna be the last person on planet Earth, or I guess both of us are the last people on planet Earth to kick off our Scott Fishbowl drafts. But
I know. Could you imagine though if like Monday morning news dump, you get Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Hopkins all signing at the same time with the chaos it would ensue in Scott Fish Bowl?
there was something like that last year. I can't seem to remember what the legal situation was or whatever it was, but every year there's some pending situation where these early drafts just get thrown to the wolves when something happens in slow drafts, and something always happens, an injury. Maybe it was I don't know, maybe it was Cam Akers a couple of years ago I'm thinking of, and all of a sudden everyone's grabbing those backups and ends up meaning nothing. But either way, we're here to talk about Dynasty Fantasy Football, not skip Scott Fishbowl, because the both of us, I'm sure, can talk all day about it. We're going to be talking about the Look Inside series. We're going to keep that going this week, talking about the Bucs, the Seahawks, and the Dolphins. One team I'm incredibly low on, and two teams I'm incredibly high on for the 2023 season. Lovely seeing you, Mr. Scampers, in the chat. Beautiful evening indeed. But before I get into those teams, I want to quickly give a shout out to all the people you should be following. So Club Fantasy, obviously, check out on Twitter at Club Fantasy FFL. Follow myself at Michael__Skull, and you follow Austin here at Austin_FFL. But without further ado, let's get into our first party crasher type of topic of the week. We're still working out the fine kinks of what this first segment is. But either way, we're going to do some buy or sell headlines because it's July. And I think the biggest thing we can do to help out people with their drafts is for, what's smoke, what's fire, what headlines we're buying, what headlines we're selling, Austin. So let me know if you're buying or selling these headlines. I got 3 to throw at you. Starting off with this one in New York, the Jets having major interest in signing Dalvin Cook, according to Mike Florio.
I mean, doesn't everybody have major interest in signing Dalvin Cook? Like, who doesn't want Dalvin Cook? This is just like the thing. He's a good running back, right? People are like, oh, he's declining, but he's still an elite running back. And so, yeah, I'm sure every team has interest in signing Dalvin Cook. But at the end of the day, where's it going to actually happen? Who's to say? My theory is still that he's going to end up in Denver and everything else is just smoke right now to try and like juice up the deal and juice up the market for him. I mean, if he did go to the Jets though, what a waste. What a waste of money.
Listen, between that, we have D-Hop talking about New England and the Tennessee Titans. Like, what he's going, like, no, we don't want this. But listen, so it sounds like you're selling this headline.
Oh, I'm selling this headline.
Okay, I'm with you, but I'm not 1,000% selling. And then here's why. We heard on draft night the most ridiculous rumor that was all but confirmed and reported constantly that the Jets wanted Jahmyr Gibbs, and we've heard a lot of teams being a lot of running backs being attached to the Jets in free agency talks. And sure, they added Izzy Abanikanda in day 3. But they are not. We've been talking all offseason about rumors with the Jets signing a running back, and they really haven't signed one. So I'm just, it's when you connect the dots of what they've wanted to do all offseason and haven't done short of adding a Abanikanda. You have Breece Hall's injury thing. We're hearing promising things about Javonte Williams. We haven't really heard a word out of Breece Hall outside of just general hopes that he'll be ready. I don't know. I'm not totally on the sell. I want to say sell because it doesn't make sense. But it depends on where the market is. Maybe Dalvin doesn't have the market that we think he does. Wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah.
And from that to Zeke, everyone still sits out there.
Yeah. My thing about that is that Jahmyr Gibbs at least makes sort of sense to me in that he's a different style of running back than Brees Hall. Bringing in Dalvin Cook, it feels like you're just like getting two of the
Yeah.
same guy. Like I know Dalvin Cook, like he's good at catching passes, and he just hasn't gotten targeted as much as we would wish he did. But I'm just like, it feels like at that point you're just putting a hat on a hat. Like what are we doing here?
It feels like Seattle in a way of what they overcorrected, what we feel like they overcorrected. Listen, they saw what they had last year. They had Kenneth Walker and nothing else, and then they suffered without Kenneth Walker. The Jets did the same with the Brees Hall. And then in our eyes, they overcorrected with drafting Zach Charbonnet as high as they did. The Jets could be following the same mantra just through free agency dollars. But I want to talk about some more headlines. I don't want to get too tied down with what the New York Jets may or may not do, because we'll talk about it if they do. Panthers.com, Darren Gargant, believes Adam Thielen will lead the Carolina Panthers in receptions in 2023. Does it matter even? Does it matter? And are you buying it?
Does it matter? No. I mean, if he leads them in receptions, how many is he getting? 80? Like that's
80 for 702, man. This could be
right. Like
this could be amazing.
I am selling this headline as well. I get that he's the wide receiver one. And so I think by default, he might lead the receivers in reception, but I'm selling on the implicit takeaway from this that you should be going after Adam Thielen, right? Like, I'm like, no, if you're going after someone in that receiving room right now, it's Jonathan Mingo, right? It's someone young that has time to develop. DJ Chark that at least has the deep threat. Adam Thielen, he may not even play out 17 games.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on this one. No arguments here. Listen, Adam Thielen should have been so much better last season based on the opportunity they had. We had Minnesota being third in pass attempts per game. We had 3 wide receiver sets go up by almost 20% in Minnesota last year, and none of that meant diddly for Adam Thielen. So the chances are that changes with a rookie quarterback in Carolina seems increasingly low. If this is true, him leading in receiving, I think it's true over the first half of the season. Second half of the season, not a chance. So one other headline I want to throw your way, Austin. Head coach Kevin O'Connell says KJ Osborne has been a real standout so far, a classic summer headline, and also a sleeper that a lot of Dynasty guys, including myself, have had a soft spot in the heart for KJ Osborne. Again, I mentioned the Vikings running 11 personnel at a very high clip, top 10 in the league. Are you buying any potential fantasy value for KJ Osborne? He's currently going off the board that wide receiver 5, 6, 7 range.
Yeah, I mean, hell yeah, I am, right? Like,
okay. I wasn't sure. There we go.
We knew this, Kevin O'Connell. Thank you for confirming what we've been telling you for the past 2 or 3 years. KJ Osborne, get on the hype train. Like, I'm all about this. And his ADP right now is kind of wild to me. I'm like, yeah, if I'm in a best ball draft in particular, that's another podcast, but if I'm in a best ball draft, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll try KJ Osborne. He's competing for touches with Jordan Addison. And while I think Addison's going to be great, like, we don't know how that offense is going to play out and how O'Connell is going to utilize both of these guys. So yeah, I believe that Osborne has been a real standout because he already has shown it in real football games, and I'm in on the hype.
Him, Khalil Shakir are just 2 of my favorite late round stashes that I find myself grabbing in all formats. I mentioned before, again, 11 personnel. They ran it at, I believe it was 67%, and it was 46% prior to Kevin O'Connell arriving in Minnesota. So there's a lot of reasons to expect plenty of 3 wide receiver sets, which will obviously incorporate KJ Osborne and Jordan Addison alike. If Jordan Addison's not ready, we could have a increasingly relevant first half of the season for KJ, and potentially more, because he's shown big playmaking ability year after year. But that's already longer than I want to spend on our party crashing topic of the week. So let's jump right into the first team, and it has to do with our lovely step-in host right here, Austin Amandolia, writing about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Mike Evans, somebody that has been arguably the biggest or the hardest person to nail down in Dynasty fantasy football, because every year puts up 1,000 yards and a handful of touchdowns, up to 10. He'll do what he's going to do. But no Tom Brady. Baker Mayfield steps in. It's an ugly situation, but I'm starting to. I have a feeling like you're warming up the seat for Mike Evans, and maybe the hate swung too far.
Yeah, if somebody wants to sell Mike Evans, just hit me up. Like I will happily throw you something for Mike Evans because I don't buy that he's gonna at the bottom is gonna fall out with him this year. I think to me, this Tampa Bay offense is with the receivers, we're treating it similar to how we treated DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett last year with the uncertainty in Seattle. And my theory going into last year was DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are elite receivers. They're going to be great no matter what. They're going to be serviceable no matter what. And I'm saying the same this year with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I also just looking at the betting lines and the betting market on this, the betting market is in on Mike Evans. There are many receivers that are getting drafted ahead of Mike Evans this year and redraft in best ball leagues that have worse receiving lines and worse receiving touchdown lines than Mike Evans. So I'm in on another 1,000-yard, 6 touchdown season for Mike Evans. The thing about Evans too, if he gets double-digit touchdowns in a year, nobody's surprised. He's done it many, many times before. And so particularly if you're in a format that values touchdowns, I'm still in on Mike Evans.
Yeah, and he does still possess that week winning nature. You have a 46-point game against Carolina week 17 last year that if you trusted him at that point. And my only pushback with Mike Evans is that he still put up the stats that we wanted last year and he finished as the wide receiver 17, but we couldn't trust him at all. He had around half of his games were not double-digit points, and it feels hard to say that that's going to change under Baker Mayfield, even though Tom Brady wasn't his greatest self last year. So best ball, I'm very much in on, but we're on a dynasty show right now, and he's 29. I think I tend to agree with you. I'm rambling right now, but the age and the situation has pushed his dynasty value a little bit too far in the other direction. But my actual question is, how much does it matter? Because he finishes as the wide receiver 20 and outperforms ADP, but you can't trust him every other week. Are you going to be able to pick the right matchups to make him worth the investment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of always been the thing with Mike Evans. So he's kind of been one of these boomer bust guys his whole career. And I think it's just like you just need to know, like if you're drafting or if you're trading for him, you're along for the ride and you're starting him every week and you're betting that the rest of your team is good enough that it's not going to matter if he has a down week. And I think that's the thing. If you're a competing team, I think Mike Evans is the perfect player to add to your team because he may be the difference between you winning your championship or not.
Let me give a quick price check here because I try to do these because I feel like that's the most actionable intel I can provide. Which would you rather have, an early second in 24 or Mike Evans as a contender?
Mike Evans.
Okay, that's interesting because I feel like that deal will get it done. As someone with Mike Evans in a lot of leagues, that would force me to really consider it. So right there, Mike Evans, the case for him with Austin right here. But let's talk about some more Buccaneers. The other guy in the passing game, and the only one that really matters in terms of aside from Mike Evans, let's talk Chris Godwin, reception king, still a little bit younger than Mike Evans, will man the slot. But again, the Baker Mayfield concern doesn't seem to be impacting drafters nearly as much. Maybe that's the age. He's still going around that wide receiver 3 mark, several rounds ahead of Mike Evans. Is it too high for Chris Godwin, or is that just about right because he's also the type of alpha you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's still about right. I mean, similar thing with Mike Evans. I just think the talent is there, and Chris Godwin's a target hog, so he's going to get you the points for all the catches he gets. I do have concern about Baker Mayfield. I think I will be lower on this team in general if Mayfield is the starter. I'm hoping Kyle Trask wins the job. I think it'll be better that way. That's just my opinion.
I mean, listen, this is a dynasty show. If anybody's rooting for Kyle Trask, it's some of our listeners out there because those are the only people holding out hope for Kyle Trask. But it looks like you're part of it.
Yeah, I'm part of it. I think I have him in the Club Dynasty League, and I am just like praying that something comes of it because I am bad in that league. So, but Chris Godwin, he's an alpha receiver, like you mentioned. He's going to get the targets, and I think that's going to be enough to keep him relevant for fantasy managers. It might not be as good as last year was, where he was just getting like 10 receptions a game at times, but I still think it's worth taking him at value right now.
What's really interesting to me with the Bucs in 2023, they were the number one team in passing attempts per game last year. However, that was with Byron Leftwich, who got fired for absolutely no reason. But either way, he's not there anymore. And Tom Brady's not there anymore. So it almost feels like, and maybe it's a reason why I'm a little bit hesitant on giving Mike Evans the discount price, and why, as much as I like Chris Godwin, I'm looking at him as more of a safety valve because of his slot role. What is this offense going to look like? Because it won't be the number one passing attempt team, despite them being a bad team. But do they have the rushing attack? And that's what I want to jump into right here. Rachaad White and not much else. How much, let's put it down right now. I want to hear your thoughts on Rachaad White, but also how many carries do you think he actually gets per game? Because I think that really matters a lot for what we're talking about in the passing game.
I mean, that is such a great question. I mean,
it's tough. It's really tough. We have a guy that wasn't really the starter last year, wasn't overly impressive at the end when he got time, but the team has shown some faith in him because they have not added much outside of Chase Edmonds, an undrafted Sean Tucker. Fournette is still out there. They haven't picked the phone up. It's ugly. It's very, very ugly.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And I think this is the type of team that I could really see them adding one of these veteran running backs. I mean, there's still, like you mentioned, several guys out there. Dalvin Cook, there's Leonard Fournette. There's one
Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt, like he would
really bad last year.
Yeah, but he would do the job that Tampa Bay would need, which would be to take up touches. Because Rachaad White, like I don't know how much we should expect him to get. I mean, I think him getting 15 carries per game, I think that would be good for him. Like I think that would be a good outcome. You would still need like 3 to 5 catches per game to really make that value pay off and to make those touches worth it. So if he were getting 15 touches, that's great, but we haven't seen yet if he has the ability to really have that 3-down role or not. And so until we see it, you're definitely betting on that you can project him accurately. And I like Rachaad White from an efficiency standpoint. He was one of my favorite running backs to target towards the end of last year. But this offense, like you said, is so uncertain that it's hard to feel confident about it, because with running backs in particular, I feel like the system impacts them often more so than I think it does for receivers. Like Mike Evans, one of the things I like about him is he's about as scheme proof as a wide receiver can get. But Rachaad White, I think the way he's used is going to really impact his fantasy upside.
Now, offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers is Dave Canales, who was the quarterback coach in Seattle, which, he got credit with, I guess, the Geno Smith turnaround, but we don't really have much information to pull from a quarterback's coach in Seattle. What I would say, and what people should know, Baker Mayfield has one of the highest check down rates in the NFL. And that's the only thing that keeps me on the Rachaad White train, is that going into 2022, he had the number one check down rate at almost 12%. And that should equate to a lot of volume for Rachaad White. And part of what I'm a little bit worried about with Mike Evans, because if Baker can't push it downfield, which he has really struggled his entire career with doing that, will Mike Evans be able to get those downfield balls? And it keeps on coming back to Mike Evans for me, because, again, it's the biggest question mark on this team. But that check down rate and what Rachaad White could bring, we talked about his ability as a receiver, as a prospect coming out of, I believe it was Arizona State. I'm still interested, but he's right in that RB dead zone and the type of guy that I find myself passing a little bit more than anybody else.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, the thing about Mayfield and his check down rate is that was why we were in on Christian McCaffrey last year. And then Christian McCaffrey was not good when Mayfield was in Carolina. And so I feel like I don't understand what to make of Baker Mayfield either this year, because he was bad when he was with the Panthers. And then when he got to LA, like emotionally, I was like, oh, this is so much better, right? He led them to a 98-yard touchdown drive to win a game in his first game.
No Cooper Kupp either.
Without Cooper Kupp. And then I was watching those games back and I was like, This offense looks
Yeah.
awful.
I'm the same exact way because you go back and look at the stats because in our heads we have that romantic ending to his season after a terrible run, and we're all kind of rooting for him because he arrived on the plane same day for that situation. And you look at the stats and they're like, wow, this is horrible.
Yeah, it's so bad. This is why I'm pulling for Kyle Trask.
Yes. Listen, you can pull for Kyle Trask, and honestly, I will too because we know what Baker is at this point, sadly. And I was rooting for him back in the day, but it is what it is. He's another Browns quarterback that flamed out. And as a Steeler fan, I am perfectly happy to say that we're not going to waste anybody's time with K-Dot and talk. But any other Bucs you want to highlight, or we move on to our next team?
We can move on, but I am a big K-Dot fan.
I kind of liked him as a prospect. I was really disappointed last year, but he's a young tight end. Maybe next year. I think next year, if he still has the role, I could be a little bit more interested. Maybe he tricks me into me streaming him again this year. Worth the stash on those taxi squads that you can stash for 2 years. But let's talk about the old team for that offensive coordinator, Seattle Seahawks, coming off startling the world last year with Geno Smith's ascension, comeback player of the year. And more so, people forget the Seahawks were beating the 49ers at halftime of a wildcard game before completely falling apart. This is a good team that made a lot of moves this offseason that I really like. But we're going to be here to talk about it, and I think they're here to stay. But either way, I want to highlight Joel's article. Obviously, he's not here to talk about it. Again, at the Joel Worth on Twitter, talked about Kenneth Walker. And I'll be honest, I just drafted him in the I'm not sure if you're familiar with the FF7's tournament. I don't know if you're in it with me, honestly. I've lost track of everything here, Austin. But Kenneth Walker, obviously Zach Charbonnet arrived, took a hit for that dynasty value, who was going very high in dynasty drafts of Kenneth Walker. But what are you making of him? Has the hate swung too far? That seems to be the theme of this show with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, the Bucs, and Kenneth Walker now.
Yeah, this show could just be subtitled "Players You Are Too Low On" because I felt that way.
It might as well.
Like Kenneth Walker, come on, y'all. Like he was good. He was really good last year. He got hurt. So Seattle needed an insurance back. But we've seen running backs make a big leap in their second year, particularly running backs with the draft capital of Kenneth Walker. I expect him to continue to be efficient. And I think having Zach Charbonnet only helps Kenneth Walker's efficiency because he's going to be better rested. I think what Seattle learned was he's not going to be a 3-down back, which they didn't draft him to be that because they had Rashad Penny on the team at the time, and Walker was forced into that 3-down role because Penny got hurt. So I think
you've seen that coming, Austin.
I guess not Philadelphia, I suppose.
Well, they got DeAndre Swift now too, so it's a healthy room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one of it's just they're going to try and plan out their injuries, so one gets hurt while the other's healthy and trade off. But yeah, I think Kenneth Walker is falling too far in dynasty leagues. I think he should continue to be an elite player, and if you can, make a trade for him right now, I don't see any reason to not target Walker in trades.
I've tried, and it feels like people are in hold territory because I think from the outside looking in, it almost feels like the buy window of that panic window passed a little bit after the draft because people are starting to settle back because it was so vast. He was somebody that was going off the board very high. Like, again, you take what you want out of keep, trade, cut, but he was a top 5 running back out of ADP in Dynasty Fantasy Football and fell to that RB16 range when Zach Charbonnet was drafted. And it's kind of balanced out around that RB13 range. But he's going right next to, a guy like Travis Etienne who has the same situation.
Yeah.
We're talking about Tank Bigsby, who came in with day 2 capital, and he's going to have to split the role with him. But for some reason, we're not quite there. I feel like we view them in different tiers. So I'm still very in on Kenneth Walker, somebody who was a borderline offensive rookie of the year, was right next to winning that. And as much as I like Zach Charbonnet, it's like I said at the top of the show, there was zero depth. And they might have overcorrected in our eyes of draft capital, but they were a worse team when Kenneth Walker wasn't able to play. So they added somebody who could fill in and fill that void. It's just good football. It's good sense. Like It's such an overreaction. It feels like somebody that I'm going to be targeting in every league. I don't feel good about this. I don't feel good about this. This is an admission here because I'm the biggest Tony Pollard guy out there. But I took Dak in a league, and I felt a little bit nervous about doubling up for some reason, which I hate. That's an issue of mine. I'm trying to work on. I'm going to therapy for it. I promise. But I took Kenneth Walker over Tony Pollard in one of my leagues, and I don't totally regret it.
Oh, I would not regret that at all. I am
okay. All right. I was waiting to be crucified.
No, you're good. You're in safe company here. Nobody has asked me about Tony Pollard yet, and it's good because if they did, I would probably be getting flamed on Twitter because I am so out on Tony Pollard.
Oh, I'm so in on Tony Pollard still. I won't lie. I see the red flags, and I see my route to being hurt, but I've been calling for the breakout for so many damn games, Austin. Do you know how frustrated? Are you not a Tony Pollard guy, or you just don't like the cost?
Both. I mean, I think in the role he had last year, he's good. I think in a 3-down role, I'm not in for that. I think we're gonna get hurt, particularly at his cost.
I will say I do like targeting Malik Davis late in drafts right now as that backup running back to Tony Pollard, who's still coming off, with broken fibula. It is a big injury that we're talking about there, and he should be fine, but again, major injury despite being a bone thing. But this isn't a Cowboys show right now. We just talked about Kenneth Walker, who I think we're both pretty in on. Let's take a quick second about. I just dropped a big gulp. So let's talk about Zach Charbonnet for a second. This is like the most crazy fancy show you guys could ask for. Zach Charbonnet obviously is that backup. We talked about him, but people are really struggling on figuring out where they want to take him in Dynasty rookie drafts. Where do you kind of see his value, and if he has any for year one?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with Charbonnet, I was really into him in the pre-draft process. I thought he was a very solid RB3. There were times where I was like, maybe I'll take him over Jahmyr Gibbs because I just, watching the tape, I really liked him. I feel like him getting drafted by Seattle hurt him more than it hurt Kenneth Walker. And so I feel very comfortable with him being the RB3 in this class. I'm not ready to put like Devon A-Chain over him. So I still think he's the RB3, but like, it's also one of those things, once you get to the back end of the first round, that's where you're starting to hit dart throws already anyways, particularly in this draft class. It's not the most deep class. So I'm still willing to take him over players like Quentin Johnston. I'm not a big Quentin Johnston guy. So I'll go with Zach Charbonnet because, I mean, like we were just talking about, they drafted him to be the backup to Kenneth Walker. He's going to cycle in and out. He's going to catch passes. And if Walker gets hurt, it's going to be Charbonnet.
That's what he has right now is league winning upside if Kenneth Walker got hurt. And God forbid, we obviously don't want Kenneth Walker to get hurt, but running backs do. And if Charbonnet goes late enough in drafts, he will be an RB1 in the same sense we say with Alexander Madison in years past. We say with insert name here, Samaje Perine at times. Like we know guys that are going to step up if asked. Tony Pollard, guys that are going to step up if asked and have given the opportunity to do so. And Charbonnet would get all of that and more if Kenneth Walker went down. Now, his only route to relevance with Kenneth Walker healthy is by catching the ball. And that's something he did really well his last year at UCLA, and he really stayed at college to show that he could do that. And I have to imagine that's what got him drafted because otherwise it's too early down type of backs, and I'm not sure why. But, Pete Carroll came out, I believe it was yesterday or a few days ago, talking about Charbonnet's ability on passing downs and what he could do in the air. And he mentioned that Kenneth Walker can do it too, but listen, we know Kenneth Walker can't. He could catch a ball behind the line of scrimmage maybe and go with it, but really wasn't his game, and I don't think it will be. But is Charbonnet going to get third downs, do you think? And will that matter for fantasy football?
Yeah, I would say probably not, just because it's really tough for rookie running backs to have that role, partially because they have to pass block a lot on third down. So I wouldn't expect them to have the third down role unless they're in like I don't know, even if they're in a third and short situation, it's going to be Kenneth Walker then too, right? Like just run it up the gut. But with Charbonnet, like he could end up coming out in some receiving sets where he like lines up in the slot. Like he's enough of a pass catcher. They could use him that way. And so you could have Walker and Charbonnet on the field at the same time.
The fact that you're saying that makes me so upset that he's on the Seahawks, man. Because somebody of his size that we could say line him up as a receiver and at the same time full well knowing he's not going to get more than like 30-35% of snaps is so frustrating. Because he was such I really did like him as a prospect quite a lot. I did the same flip-flop over here too. But yeah, it does seem like Jaylen Warren, kind of a slightly more involved Jaylen Warren type of a role is what I'm expecting.
I think that's a very, very good comparison.
Yeah. So let's talk about the rest of the Seattle Seahawks because it is a team that has a lot of hope assigned to it. We have arguably the best wide receiver room in the NFL of DK, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. It's insane. You have a solid tight end room with Noah Fant, Will Dissly, and names. And then you have a strong offensive line, and you have obviously whatever Geno is. So I'm going to let you take your first piece of the pie here. Where do you want to start? Because there's honestly so much to talk about with Seattle.
I don't like what? How did they get this many pieces? All of a sudden, it's like Seattle is just
Wilson. May I introduce you to Mr. Unlimited? Oh, I can't do it.
I hope he's enjoying the high altitude.
He better because that's all he's got going for him right now. But let's start with the receivers then. DK, Tyler Lockett. I think we all know what DK is. We're very excited for DK. Everyone likes DK. So I honestly barely want to talk about him because he feels like the most last year was low in ADP. He proved he's great. Geno's good. We're happy with him. We're good. But Tyler Lockett is somebody that the Dynasty community has such a weird pulse on because of the JSN pick. And also because of his age. He's over 30 years old. He's clearly the guy that's going to be the cost of JSN's ascension, inevitably. So for now, though, 2023, Dynasty still matters to win this year. What do you think about Tyler Lockett, and does he stick around for the full season in terms of fantasy relevance?
I mean, I think yes. I feel like with Geno Smith, we saw his role become more consistent than what it was with Russell Wilson. You know, Tyler Lockett used to be the epitome of a best ball player, and last year he was way more consistent, and it was surprising to me. I didn't expect it, and it was good to see. I feel like that continues this year. He's someone I'd be targeting if I'm competing because JSN, like, first off, he's not going to be replacing Tyler Lockett's snaps, right? He's replacing Marquise Goodwin's snaps. They needed a slot receiver. Tyler Lockett doesn't really line up in the slot all that often. And if he does, it's to kind of like move things around, get guys in motion and confuse the defense, right? It's not because he's a slot only guy like Marquise Goodwin and JSN are. So I'm still in on Lockett for this year. I think like the age thing, I get it. Like if you're trying to rebuild, yes, now is the time to dump Tyler Lockett. But if you're competing, this is the type of receiver I want, someone who's proven it time and time again. JSN, I think he's just going to take some time to really have the elite fantasy upside we want to see from him. I think he's clearly the best receiver of this class. I just don't think the usage is going to be there because there's so many mouths to feed in this offense. I mean, there are 7 players that could touch the ball on any given play, and I'm not going to be mad about it because I'm like, they're all good.
Seattle has a very real chance of winning this division. I mean,
oh yeah,
people are talking about the 49ers. They roll to it every year and everything like that. We don't know who their starting quarterback is right now, and I don't think we will until mid to late August.
I would like to know a little earlier because I am signed up to write the article on them.
I'd like to today, Austin. I'd like to know yesterday. I'd like to know last month because I have been constantly staring at Trey Lance falling in drafts, and I'm like, I want to take this shot on you, but I just drafted Ryan Tannehill instead because I don't think you're going to get on the field. And
it's so rough.
It's annoying. But again, this isn't a 49ers show. I could keep on going all night about how annoying that is. But Tyler Lockett, before the NFL draft, so before the perceived massive hit, I drafted him on April 6th. I just checked it right now. Where do you think I drafted him? Yeah, in terms of just rounds, the super flex dynasty, 12 teams.
I mean, round 7.
Round 7, and this is before the NFL draft, where his obviously he dropped even further. I took him at the 16-12. Granted, this had IDP in it, so maybe you
Oh,
want to. I should have included that. Let's bump it 6 rounds up then, even though it probably
yeah,
wasn't even much. 6 rounds up to the 10th, still, and that was pre NFL draft with the JSN selection. So people are not interested in Tyler Lockett, and they really should be, because he hasn't fallen off slightly, and he is going to be one of the best receivers that we don't remember, because
exactly.
he's just so good, and he's earned his way on this field. This is a guy that's been a top 15 wide receiver in PPR for each of the last 4 seasons, and before that, 5 seasons he was like the wide receiver 17. So he's proven himself. He hasn't fallen off. JSN will have to prove himself, and like you said very well, JSN will start in the slot, and that's not where Tyler Lockett does his best work. So, Geno Smith, I want to ask you now, because that's obviously the other big question mark. Was last year a fluke? Was it a sign of things to come? Was it a limited ceiling? But that's what we're going to hopefully get, is a stable quarterback. What are you hoping for from Geno Smith in 2023? He was the QB5, not quite in points per game, but still a little bit behind that. A very good season, all things considered.
Yeah, I think he is. He's undervalued. He's not severely undervalued though, right? Like, I don't think he should be getting drafted at QB5 like he was last year. I think that would be so much of an overreaction. But the fact that he's not even going as a QB1 right now is wild. And that's obviously redraft best ball ADP. So I understand he's older, so he's going to fall a little bit farther in dynasty startups. But I still think he's a great quarterback to have as your QB2. Hell, I'll even have him as my QB1 if I decided I want to load up on tight end and receiver early in a draft. I'm fine with having him, particularly if I'm doing a win now strategy in a startup. Geno Smith seems to be a great option, right? He did all of that last year with 2 rookie offensive linemen, and without JSN in the slot, he had Marquise freaking Goodwin as his slot receiver, and he still was able to put up QB5 numbers. And he has the part of the reason that is he runs the ball. Like, he will evade the pocket and run. And now he's going to have a better receiving core, going to have more chemistry with his offensive line. I only see him continuing more of the same. Maybe he falls off a little in terms of like his final ranking because other quarterbacks bounce back like Justin Herbert, but I don't think you're going to see the bottom fall out for Geno Smith.
I completely agree. And I feel like most people are honestly on the same page of believing him. And the real question for Dynasty is, can he do it this year? Because his contract is geared in a way that is essentially a 1-year deal that they can get out of, but they'll happily keep him for 3 at a pretty good rate if it works out. So if he proves that he can, get them to a playoff run and then maybe even win a game of the playoffs, he's going to stick around, and that's going to be a tremendous value at where he's going in Dynasty drafts. He's somebody that I would love to have as my QB2 in Superflex. I've tried. I was so upset in a tournament draft that I was doing just a few days ago. We went at just like the 307. I was picking at 312 and didn't work, but that's fine because eventually I got Ryan Tannehill, and that just feels fantastic. Yeah, I waited too long, Austin, but this is going to turn into a personal mourning if I keep going with that. No, you hit on the head, because I don't think any quarterback is more prepared to back up what he did last year than Geno Smith. Again, JSN addition, great offensive line that added more pieces, a defense that could actually help him out, a stable running game that won't abandon him halfway through the year when the starter inevitably gets hurt, because that's what happens with running backs. There's depth at every position. It's why I'm so high in Seattle, and it's why I've already placed a few bets for them to win the division. I think at like plus 200.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Great odds.
It's a good team. They've made improvements on defense. They've added to the cornerback room. They added Draymond Jones in the middle. I could go on and on with they added Bobby Wagner back. I could go on and on with my IDP side of the ball, but this is an offensive show, and I'm not going to do that, Austin. Yeah. But any other Seattle Seahawks you want to talk about? I think we hit most of them, but I have seen some people talk about Noah Fant as a nice late round grab. Any interest in Dynasty?
In Dynasty, I mean, usually in Dynasty, I'm like a Travis Kelce or bust type of player. So not really going to be looking for Noah Fant for that that reason. But if I am in a situation where I've missed out on all of the elite tight ends, like, yes, I will have Noah Fant on my roster to at least have a bye week fill in, with the hope that I have a different tight end that I can start more consistently. The issue with Noah Fant is that he does compete for touches with Will Dissly. And,
yeah,
I write our DFS article during the year, and I swear to God, I put Will Dissly or Noah Fant in my article so many times last year, and
whichever one you put, it was the
always missed.
And that's what listen. Everyone, I do DFS as much as anybody, and it was I know exactly what you're saying, because you look at the matchup and you're like, oh, it's good, but I don't know which one it is. And the other guy, one guy goes 3 for 25, and he actually has volume. The other guy has 2 for 10 and 2, or 2 for 102, something wild.
Yeah,
because that's what happened in Seattle last year. But I'll throw out this: Noah Fant is only 25 years old. He turns 26 in November.
that's
Feels
wild.
like he's been around forever, right?
It does.
He was drafted in 2019. So listen, we tight ends usually break out around that 26, 27 range mark. Hopefully 25 as well. That's not going to happen because of how crowded Seattle is. But maybe a year from now, I don't mind him as a stash. I think he is going late enough that I want him on my rosters. I'm with you, though. I'm not expecting much for 2023. Let's jump on down to Miami now. Now, I talked about Seattle winning the division. I think Miami wins the division. I think Miami wins the AFC East, plus 300 right now. Not a gambling show, but we are fantasy football. We know what we're about. I think Miami wins it all. Not wins it all, but I think they win the division, and I think it's going to be an excellent season. There's a million reasons why, but I want to first jump into the Tua Tagovailoa piece that Andrew Metcalf at DrewMet_FF wrote on the site. Again, all these articles you guys can check out at clubfantasyffl.com. All these amazing in-depth reads, including Austin's piece on Mike Evans. I got a piece about the Minnesota Vikings and Jordan Addison, who you disparaged on last week's show, Austin. I don't forget that, but we'll talk about it at some point. Do you not remember? Do you not remember? That was a look of surprise.
No, I don't remember.
It was some comment about somebody going early, and they're like, "Oh, he's going."
Oh,
next
yeah. I remember this. They're going ahead.
I keep grudges here, Austin. But this is about, again, Miami Dolphins. So let's talk Tua Tagovailoa, somebody that was the subject of the NFL season for a good portion of it due to the concussion issues. But he had an unbelievable season that would have been remembered very differently if not for some freak hits. So where are you at with Tua? Because he's a very interesting player to work on for Dynasty, because we know what he can be, but we know what he could also be experiencing, with a few more injuries.
Yeah. And I very much get that with the health side of things. I am so in on Tua this year, though. I remember when watching him last year and watching the hits he took, I remember internally thinking, the fact that his head always snaps back when he gets put on his back doesn't feel like it needs to be that way. And I don't know enough to have known at the time, he could do some things to take care of that, right? I'm not a physical therapist or a performance specialist or anything like that. And to hear the fact that in the offseason, he was working on falling so that he, in a way that protects his head, was a really good sign for me, both just for his own personal well-being and his quality of life, and also from a health perspective for fantasy football. So I feel confident about his ability to stay on field this year. And we're drafting Tyreek Hill as the third or fourth receiver overall in redraft and best ball. So we're expecting Tyreek Hill to have a ceiling outcome this year, and having Jalen Waddle also being drafted as a wide receiver 1 in redraft and best ball this year. So who's throwing him the ball? It's Tua Tagovailoa. The ceiling is there for him. I think if you're able to get him as your QB2, holy crap, you're going to be set, particularly in 6-point passing touchdown leagues, where you're going to get that extra value and kind of offset the lack of rushing you get with him. So I'm very in on Tua. I'm willing to bet on him being healthy this year. I think last year was just a freak accident. It was a one-off. There's a whole other conversation to be had there about how the NFL handled it. But I don't think we see that continue.
I completely agree. And I'm giving him the same pass that I give to any player that suffers an injury, because I'm not going to say that you're not injury prone because you suffer concussions. That's a very unlucky situation. Like you said,
Yeah.
he's taken a lot of steps to prepare that, because you better believe the Dolphins are doing the same, because they want Tua to work out. They want Tua to be their guy. And the biggest thing in his way is just staying away from concussions, because that could end his career. And I
Yeah.
get that's scary because you have to invest to get him in dynasty drafts, but he's still going, outside you could get him right around that, back end second round in super flex dynasty drafts right now, maybe even in the third. And this is a young quarterback on his rookie contract that was, despite all the hate thrown his way, one of the best deep ball throwers in football last year. One of the people who challenged defenses deep at the highest clip, who has Jalen Waddle at his hip for the foreseeable future, and Tyreek Hill for at least another couple of years, most likely. And Mike McDaniel, a quarterback, a coach that really impressed me and a lot of the NFL last year, and was right there. Would have been a playoff team that made some serious noise if Tua was able to stay healthy, but instead they had Skylar Thompson just have that engine whimper to an end to the season.
And somehow they still stayed competitive with Buffalo.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so in on this team this year. And when I say they're going to win the division, that's because of how high I am on Tua Tagovailoa. But it's also why I'm drafting the Dolphins DST, which, this is a dynasty show. It's not, most don't include DSTs, but just to talk about that, I'm really in on this entire team. They've made such great improvements. You had Vic Fangio to the defense to coach that up. You had Deshaun Elliott to work the free safety room. You got David Long on linebacker, Christian Wilkins, Bradley Chubb. Everyone, Jalen Phillips, Austin. I could keep going about IDP names, but the team is complete. And when a defense is good, it helps the offense out because they can control and do what they want to do. We get some better field position, more touchdown upside. And like you said, those two wide receivers are going in the top 10 of a redraft and best ball. They're going in the top 10 of Dynasty too, despite the age of Tyreek Hill, because of how good they are. And again, Tua's throwing on the ball. The only question is, can he stay healthy? Because everything else is set up for him to be a huge type of breakout in 2023. And if you argue 2022 wasn't, because I'm very much in on the Miami Dolphins, especially Tua. But let's talk about those. We kind of talked about the receivers, so I don't even want to lean on too much. But, I mean, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Dynasty, let's do a head-for-head straight up right now because they are going fairly close to each other. Which one would you rather have in Dynasty?
Tyreek if I'm competing, Jalen Waddle if I'm not. It's that simple for me.
I think it's Jalen Waddle for me either way. And that's partially – I know it's a little bit hot, and, I can say that and have it come across as a hot take, but in reality have them at, back-to-back in my ranks. But my basis for that is getting 5 years younger and also a guy that was so – great on volume last year, yet still averaged around 17 yards per catch and was a downfield monster in Jalen Waddle. And listen, he's just a terrific player. But I really do believe that this offense is geared for a huge breakout. And I think part of that comes down with the running game and how they are going to be incorporating a player that they didn't have last year in Devon Achane, who really does bring something special to this running back room. How are you breaking down this entire situation? Because it is a little bit hard. It's a little bit murky between some proven vets, incumbent vets, and then you have the arrival of Devon Achane and maybe Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, it is very murky. I think if I am put in a corner and told I have to pick one of these three, I'm going to pick Devon Achane just because we have not seen Raheem Mostert or Jeff Wilson play a 17-game season, right? They miss games, they cycle off and on. And so Achane, I think, is more likely to take over this running back room at some point just due to injuries. But I'm really avoiding this running back room just because I don't know what to make of it. And when there's a 3-headed committee, that's when I start to back out of backfields in general. It's like trying to pick a running back out of our classic New England Patriots teams. I don't have interest in that. And so I'm gonna avoid this backfield in most cases in dynasty leagues.
I hated that so much when New England used to do that. Like, it's not as bad as it used to be, but it used to be so bad. Kids these days won't understand, you know. So
There was one year where I wrote it high and I picked the right running back like consistently
that
for a
must feel
while.
amazing because you'll
And I
win.
yeah, I won that year. But then I tried it the next year. I was like, what am I doing? This is awful.
I still remember. I'll never forget his name. It's Mike Gillislee. You remember Mike Gillislee, Mister 7,000 touchdowns through 3 weeks and never heard from ever again. Oh, but again, that's New England. I don't want to. New England running backs. Ugh, pain. But the only person I want to also bring up, obviously, Achane is the exciting person to have. I'm not that interested in Raheem Mostert, but Jeff Wilson was extended this offseason. He did not need to be. They could have let him go. But that is interesting to me is that they made it a priority to keep him and bring him back. So I do think Jeff Wilson will be, if I just say of the three of them who leads in touches, I think it's Jeff Wilson. Then again, I'm hoping Dalvin Cook signs a nice 1 year, $8 million deal and puts this all to rest. And then I'll only be interested in Achane because he's the only person of those three that actually would complement another back in a significant way. Let's call it right now. If Dalvin Cook lands there with Miami, where does he jump in your rankings?
Oof.
I know that's a little bit hard to say. I'll pull up a this or that with a few names, and hopefully that could help out as I try to find some names. Let's go Aaron Jones or Dalvin Cook. If Dalvin signs a 1 year, $9 million contract.
Probably go on Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones. All right. What about Isaiah Pacheco?
Oh, Dalvin Cook.
And Joe Mixon. There we go.
Is he
got
suspended or is he not suspended?
It's the game. Is Dalvin Cook? Yeah, I'm saying Dalvin Cook signs. Let's say
if he signs, I'm going Dalvin Cook just because of more certainty there.
Okay, and the last one I'll throw out there, Alvin Kamara.
Dalvin Cook. I think Kamara's done.
Okay, that's currently how I have him in my ranks before he even signed. I'm hoping to do that. And we're gonna organize a show just for Dynasty ranks at some point soon. We gotta work on that a little bit more. But either way, that's the Miami Dolphins. Anyone else you want to talk about on this team? We don't care about the tight end room at all.
We don't have to worry about Mike Gesicki being on this team, so that's nice.
We don't, which is really nice, really nice. And we talked about Mike Gesicki last week.
Is it just Payne Durham at this point? Is that their tight end?
Durham Smythe.
Durham Smythe,
right?
It was Durham.
Payne Durham was a rookie in this class. I can't even tell you where he is. But yeah, that's where the Miami Dolphins tight end situation is at, and that's where the Miami Dolphins are at. Book it right now. AFC East champions plus 300. Put your bets in. Not officially endorsed or anything like that. So let's talk about our do better trade review as we round out today's show. Every single week we're talking about trades and we see whether we're going to be sticking that do better sticker on it or if they're good. If they're good trades, and either way, we're going to give you our thoughts. And again, always be sure to comment anything you want in the chat that we're trying to help you out with, because ultimately we're not here talking to the void. We're here talking to you, and we want to be able to help you guys out with your trades. So DeAndre Swift, 207 and 307 for Jahmyr Gibbs.
Do better.
Yeah, do better. I saw this on Twitter, and I got all the trades that we're going to bring up right now on Twitter. I couldn't believe my eyes with this one.
I used the 105, 106 for Jahmyr Gibbs, and then we're like, oh yeah, no, he's worth a running back that gets hurt every year and two dart throw draft picks.
We've only been talking about how close to overvalued Jahmyr Gibbs on the show the last few weeks because of how much love he's getting. So me seeing this and subsequently seeing the Twitter poll that supported our do better take was mind-blowing. I knew I had to bring it up for this type of segment. But here's one that's a little bit more, definitely more interesting in my opinion. I had to pause when I thought about it. Devonta Smith and Jerry Jeudy for Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mike Williams, another player that seems to have been left for dead in the Dynasty community, but Amon-Ra, obviously a star. Which side of this trade would you take? And I think I speak for both of us when it's not a slap do better type of sticker.
Yeah, I don't think this is a do better. I think this is like what kind of seasoning do you like on in your soup? if you like one over the other, it's fine. But for me, I'm taking the Amon-Ra St. Brown side just because he's the wide receiver one in that offense. And what this trade does is it trades one receiver one and a wide receiver two for two wide receiver twos, right? Like, I don't know if Jerry Jeudy's ever going to be the wide receiver one.
Yes, he will be. It will be awesome.
We say this every year. We say this every year. We do this all the time.
Oh, look, Sean Payton's
Jerry
there.
Jeudy. I don't. So he likes to run the ball.
Yeah, but his running
He's
back
there
has an LCL or an ACL.
until he signs Dalvin Cook.
Oh no! Don't do that to me. I love Javonte. It's going to be okay. I know you said before, and I didn't bite your head off, but I will here because everyone's been drafting Samaje Perine late, and while that hasn't been me, I speak up for the zero RB community on this show.
But didn't you? Okay, there was a news report today though that was like, oh, Devontae Smith or Javonte Williams, he's doing great.
Yeah, I did see that, and it seemed massively overblown because the actual quote was, Javonte saying, yeah, I'm hoping to be back at camp. I expect to be ready. He's kind of been saying this for a month, and yeah, the player will say he's hopefully ready for training camp. Hopefully he will be. Everything's been trending in the good direction, but it was a very serious injury. The Twitter doctors I like to follow still are not expecting a week one readiness, but it is at least hopeful that he won't be half strength all season long. But as for this trade, which I took us off the Randall there because I had to stand up for my Jerry Jeudy, I think I lean with Devonta Smith and Jerry Jeudy, and I love Amon-Ra. I'm not worried about the wide receiver two nature of teams anymore in 2023. There's just so many teams that support two wide receivers. And Devonta Smith will have his quarterback locked up. Jerry Jeudy, to me, is a breakout type of player for this season. And while Amon-Ra is great, and I believe in him, we haven't seen it with James Williams. And while I don't expect James Williams they should complement each other incredibly well, that is a question mark. Is Amon-Ra the number one for his team? Probably. But we do have that factor of a first-round talent in Alabama coming back that I really do like too. And it would not floor me next year if James Williams had more fantasy points than Amon-Ra.
Oh, I would take the other side of that. I would put money on that Amon-Ra St. Brown outscores Jameson Williams in 2024.
See, of course you would say it straight up, but if you give me some plus odds, which I think I'm asking for here, I since the NBA season ended, I've been looking for things to wager on. I think it just came out right there. But either way, it's probably going to go that route. And either way, like my same argument for two wide receivers being relevant, it would very well happen for James Williams and Amon-Ra. But I suppose this maybe just looks at how low I am on Mike Williams now and how much I like him as a talent, but he can't stay on the field. They've already drafted his replacement. I don't know where he plays football next year. And I'm not going to say that question for Devonta Smith or Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if you're competing this year, though, I'd rather have the guy catching the passes from Justin Herbert than betting on a Russell Wilson bounce back.
That's 100% fair. I got one more trade for you. Let's talk about it here, and we'll start off with Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard, Ramondre Stevenson, and Drake London for CMC and Cooper Kupp.
Do better.
I don't know why I don't know. And that's kind of the point of this segment of the do better is we're trying to find trades like this just to make fun of, to make all of us feel better for the trades that have gone wrong. But I'm trying to let's just take a quick second here, Austin, and try to figure out the reasoning behind this trade. What could possibly be the thought process?
I mean,
age. I think that's the argument that some people make. And I had a trade go down in my Dynasty League that we talked about on the show last week of somebody that was so committed to rebuilding that he just shipped off his veterans for younger pieces and didn't think anything about it. And I think that's a very common error to make in Dynasty Leagues that might have been made right here, where somebody looked and said, hey, I want that running back on the rookie contract. I want that young Drake London, and I'll get rid of my proven veterans because they're great, but they're going to not help me tank for a better draft pick. So I'm just going to get them off my team. And that's bad process.
exactly. Like the fact that there are no draft picks in this is malpractice. Also, like I'm selling Ramondre Stevenson wherever I freaking can because, like, y'all, Ty Montgomery was catching passes week 1
Oh,
last
for
year before he got
God's
hurt.
sake. Ty Montgomery. That would be the most Patriots thing ever, wouldn't it?
It would. That's
Yeah.
why I'm like, I'm out. I got my Ramondre season. I'm good.
I'm relatively in on Ramondre. I'm probably a spot or two lower than consensus because people are incredibly high on him, but I do think he still holds down the backfield for the most part. And, a team that should use more 12 personnel we're expecting a more tight end heavy set, Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry. It should lend well to a rushing attack that, Patriots can't afford to pass the ball that much unless they maybe add DeAndre Hopkins. And even then, it's quite the questionable group. But we are going to round out on that amazing trade because that is Dynasty Fantasy Football to a T for you. So thank you all for tuning in, and thank you especially to Austin here for filling in last minute because of Joel getting absolutely slammed by the amazing airplane business that just loves to delay and delay and delay. So I want to thank you, Austin, for hopping in today.
Oh yeah, glad to be here. Glad to do it anytime. Just like do quick plugs. Tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Mock It Like It's Hot. I'll be hosting that show, and then tomorrow night our Best Ball podcast launches. I'll be recording it here soon. Be hosting that as well. So be ready.
That's all the more reason to be following the Club Fantasy FFL YouTube page and all of the socials, again, at Club Fantasy FFL, because you don't want to miss Austin's shows, and you certainly won't want to miss any of the content coming out from Club Fantasy because it's all going to help you guys win your leagues, and that's what we're here to do. So be sure to follow Austin here at Austin_FFL for all the amazing things he just said, as well as some great stories that he's writing too. We've talked about Mike Evans earlier. Be sure to be checking all of those out at Club Fantasy FFL. And you can follow myself at Michael__Sicoli. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next week, as always, at 8 o'clock because remember, Dynasty is like a disco ball. It keeps on spinning year round. So join the club every Sunday at 8 o'clock Eastern right here with Club Fantasy.